The Starlight Throne sailed through the darkness between stars. The journey to the compact summit would take 12 days, and Princess Valera found herself spending more time watching Nathan Cole than she cared to admit. He was everywhere. In the morning, he helped the kitchen staff repair a broken cooling unit. In the afternoon, he played games with the children of the crew members, teaching them something called chess that seemed to involve moving small pieces across a checkered board. In the evening, he sat with the off-duty guards and listened to their stories, asking questions about their families and their homeworlds. Everyone liked him. The servants called him kind. The engineers called him clever. Even the guards, who had been suspicious at first, began to relax around him. He never complained about his small room on the lower deck. He never asked for better treatment. He simply fixed things, helped people, and smiled his warm smile. But Valera could not forget that moment in the dining hall, when his eyes had turned cold. She could not forget the 3 assassins who had been stopped by someone who officially did not exist. On the 5th day, she summoned Lord Murcon to her private study. "Tell me about humans," she said. "Everything we know." Murcon activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, a blue and green world covered in oceans and forests. It looked peaceful from space, but the data told a different story. "Humans evolved on a death world," Murcon began. "Their planet is covered with predators, natural disasters, and diseases that would kill most species. The gravity is heavy, the weather is violent, and the native life is constantly trying to eat them or poison them." Valera frowned. "How did they survive?" "They are what is called persistence predators," Murcon said. "They do not have claws or fangs or natural weapons. They cannot run as fast as their prey, but they can run for longer. They would chase an animal for hours, sometimes days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would kill it." The princess felt a chill run down her spine. "They hunted by refusing to stop?" "Exactly. Humans have incredible endurance. They heal faster than most species. They can survive injuries that would kill a Cathari. And their minds are remarkably adaptable. They learn quickly, adjust to new situations, and find solutions to problems that other species would consider impossible." Murcon changed the image to show human soldiers. They were not impressive compared to the warriors of other races. No natural armor, no enhanced senses, no biological weapons. They looked soft and fragile. "But they are not warriors," Murcon concluded. "They joined the galactic community only 50 years ago. They have no great military tradition, no legendary battles. They are traders and explorers, not conquerors." Valera nodded slowly. That matched what she had seen in Nathan. He was friendly, helpful, and apparently harmless. So why did her instincts scream that he was dangerous? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A young officer entered, his face pale with fear. "Your Highness," he said, "long-range sensors have detected a fleet on intercept course. They will reach us in 6 hours." Murcon stood abruptly. "What kind of fleet?" The officer swallowed hard. "Dracor, my lord. A full hunting pack." The blood drained from Valera's face. She had heard stories about the Dracor her whole life. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. Massive reptilian creatures who had conquered 100 worlds. They did not negotiate. They simply hunted, killed, and moved on to the next target. No species had ever defeated a Dracor hunting pack in open combat. The next few hours were chaos. The bridge was filled with officers shouting reports, engineers pushing the engines to maximum speed, communications officers trying desperately to reach anyone who might help. It was hopeless. The Dracor ships were faster. They would catch the Starlight Throne long before it reached friendly space. Valera stood at the center of the bridge, watching the sensor display with cold dread. The Dracor fleet was 5 times larger than her own escort. They had warships designed for one purpose: Destruction. We should prepare a surrender broadcast, Murkon said quietly. Perhaps we can negotiate. Offer them tribute. The Drakor do not accept tribute, someone replied. They accept only prey. Nathan appeared at the bridge entrance. No one had given him permission to be there. But the guards did not stop him as he walked through the chaos and approached the princess. Do not surrender, he said. His voice was quiet, but somehow it cut through the noise. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. Velara felt a flash of anger. You are an apprentice. You have no right to speak here. Nathan met her gaze steadily. Your Highness, I am asking you to trust me. I need you to open a communication channel to the Drakor flagship. Murkon stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. This is madness. You would have us provoke them? I need to speak with their hunt leader, Nathan continued, ignoring the threat. I know what I am doing. You are a mechanic, Velara said coldly. What could you possibly know about dealing with Drakor? Something shifted in Nathan's expression. The friendly apprentice disappeared, and for a moment, Velara saw the thing that had looked back at her in the dining hall. Ancient, cold, absolutely certain. I know them better than you can imagine, he said. Open the channel, please. The please sounded strange coming from him. It was not a request. It was a courtesy, offered out of habit rather than necessity. Velara looked at the sensor display. The Drakor ships were closing fast. In a few hours, everyone on this ship would be dead. She looked back at Nathan. He stood perfectly still, waiting. There was no fear in his eyes, no doubt, just patience, as if he had all the time in the world. Open the channel, she heard herself say. The communications officer hesitated, then obeyed. The main screen flickered. A face appeared, and several Cathari officers gasped in horror. His scales were black as obsidian, his eyes yellow and slitted like a reptile's. His teeth were visible even when his mouth was closed, designed for tearing flesh from bone. Scars covered his face, each one a trophy from a different hunt. He was called Kraveth the Unbroken. He had personally killed thousands. He had never retreated from a hunt in his entire life. Kraveth looked at the bridge with contempt. His eyes swept over the frightened Cathari officers, the elegant princess, the outdated weapons. Then his gaze found Nathan, and he froze. Nathan stepped forward until he was standing directly in front of the screen. He did not bow. He did not show any sign of fear or respect. He simply looked up at the monster who had terrorized the galaxy for decades and spoke a single sentence. The words were in the Drakor language, a harsh guttural tongue that sounded like rocks grinding together. No translator could decipher them, but whatever Nathan said, the effect was immediate. Kraveth's yellow eyes went wide. His scarred face twisted with something that looked almost like fear. You, he breathed. You are the one they call the Shepherd. Nathan nodded slowly. Turn your ships around, Kraveth. This vessel is under my protection. The hunt is ended. The bridge fell absolutely silent. Every eye was on the screen, watching the impossible scene unfold. Kraveth the Unbroken, the hunter who had never retreated, stared at the small human in grease-stained clothes. His claws flexed, his muscles tensed, and for a moment, Velara thought he would attack anyway. Then his shoulders dropped. We did not know, Kraveth said. We did not know you were here. We withdraw. The transmission cut. On the sensor display, the Drakor fleet began to turn away. One by one, they jumped to hyperspace, disappearing into the darkness. In minutes, they were gone. The bridge remained silent. Officers stared at their consoles in disbelief. Guards gripped their weapons with white knuckles. Lord Myrkon looked like he had seen a ghost. Princess Velara turned to Nathan. Her voice was barely a whisper. Who are you? Nathan looked at her with those ancient eyes, and for once he did not smile. We should talk in private, Your Highness. There are things you need to know. The princess led Nathan to her private study. She dismissed her guards, despite their protests, and closed the door behind her. For a long moment, she simply stood there, staring at the man who had just turned back the most feared hunters in the galaxy. He looked the same as always, average height, brown hair, friendly face. The grease smudge was still on his cheek, but now Velora saw past the disguise, and what she saw terrified her. Sit down, she said finally, and tell me the truth. Nathan settled into a chair across from her desk. He moved differently now, she noticed. The clumsy apprentice was gone. Every motion was precise, controlled, like a predator conserving energy. My name really is Nathan Cole, he began. I really am from New Montana, but I am not an apprentice engineer. I am what we call a shepherd. What does it mean? Nathan was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. When humanity first reached the stars, we thought we were ready. We had survived our death world, built great cities, conquered our own nature. We believed we could handle anything the galaxy threw at us. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. We were wrong. The galaxy is old, Your Highness. It is full of species that have been hunting and killing for millions of years. The Dracor are just one of many. There are things out there that make them look tame. Velora felt cold. What does this have to do with you? After first contact, Earth's leaders realized we needed protection. Not just armies and fleets, but something else. Something that could go where armies could not, do what fleets could not. They created a program in secret, selecting children with certain abilities and training them from a young age. Training them for what? Nathan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Everything. Combat, infiltration, diplomacy, survival, psychology, medicine, engineering. We learned every skill that might help us protect humanity and its allies. We studied every species, every threat, every weakness. We became something new. He met her eyes directly. There are 12 of us. We are called shepherds because our job is to protect the flock. We answer to no government. We follow no flag. We go wherever we are needed and do whatever must be done. Velora struggled to process this. You are saying the humans created secret soldiers? Spies? More than that, we are the last line of defense. When everything else fails, when armies are defeated and fleets are destroyed, we are what remains. We are humanity's response to a hostile universe. The princess stood and walked to her window. Outside, the stars drifted past in peaceful silence. It was hard to believe that so much danger lurked in that darkness. The Dracor, she said. Kravith was afraid of you. I saw it in his eyes. Why? Nathan did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. 8 years ago, a Dracor armada attacked a human colony called Haven's Rest. It was a small world, mostly farmers and families, 12,000 civilians. The colony had no military presence, no real defenses. The Dracor expected easy prey. He paused. I was there. I had been living on Haven's Rest for 2 years, working as a mechanic in the main settlement. I knew everyone. I had friends there, people I cared about. Velora turned to face him. What happened? The Dracor came with 40 warships. They began their hunt, landing troops to chase down civilians for sport. They did not know I was there. They did not know what I was. Nathan's hands were perfectly still in his lap, but his eyes had gone dark. The hunt lasted 3 days. At the end, there were no Dracor left. No warships, no troops, no survivors. I killed them all. The words hung in the air between them. Velora felt her throat tighten. 40 warships, she repeated. Thousands of Dracor warriors. And you, one person. Humans are persistent predators, Nathan said quietly. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We learned to endure pain, to push past exhaustion, to keep going when other species would collapse. And we learned to hunt. He stood and walked to the window, standing beside her. The Dracor are apex predators. They have claws and fangs and armored scales. They are fast and strong and utterly ruthless. But they have a weakness. They expect their prey to run. They expect fear, panic, desperation. He looked out at the stars. They do not expect their prey to hunt them back. Velara studied his reflection in the glass. He looked so ordinary, so human. It was impossible to connect this quiet man with the stories she had just heard. "How did you do it?" she asked. "One person against an armada." Nathan shook his head slowly. "I cannot tell you the details. Some of it is classified, and some of it I do not like to remember. But I can tell you this. I did not defeat them through strength. I defeated them through patience, strategy, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary." He turned to face her. "The Dracor call that day the Silent Reaping. They do not know exactly how I did it. They only know that they sent 40 warships to kill farmers, and none of them came home. They have feared the shepherds ever since." Velara was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the bridge. "Why are you here? Why did this human send a shepherd to accompany a Cathari princess?" Nathan's expression softened slightly. "Your people asked for a cultural liaison. Earth Command decided you needed more than that. There are forces moving against the Cathari, Your Highness, powerful forces that do not want your alliance with humanity to succeed. The assassins? They were just the beginning. Someone hired them to kill you before you reached the summit. When they failed, that someone called in the Dracor as backup. They were willing to risk a hunting pack just to stop you." Velara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. Who wants me dead?" "I do not know yet, but I intend to find out." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communicator, but Velara could see that it was far more advanced than anything on her ship. "I have been investigating since I came aboard. The assassins were hired through a series of intermediaries, but the money came from somewhere in the compact. Someone on the council does not want the Cathari to gain power." "You have been spying on us?" "I have been protecting you," Nathan corrected gently. "Everything I have done since I arrived has been to ensure you survive long enough to reach the summit and secure your people's future." Velara did not know what to say. She had spent days looking down on this man, treating him like a servant, assuming he was beneath her notice. And all that time, he had been watching over her, keeping her alive. "Why did you let everyone treat you like that?" she asked finally. "You could have demanded respect. You could have revealed who you were." Nathan smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. "Because kindness costs nothing, Your Highness. And the best way to know a people is to see how they treat those they think are beneath them." Velara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had not been kind. She had been cold, dismissive, even rude. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. Nathan shook his head. "You do not owe me anything. You treated me the way your culture taught you to treat servants. That is not your fault. And besides," his smile widened, "your crew has been wonderful. The children are delightful. Vortek in the engine room makes the best tea I have ever tasted. Your people have good hearts, Your Highness. They just need leaders who bring out the best in them." Velara looked at this strange human, this secret weapon disguised as a mechanic, and felt something shift in her heart. "What happens now?" she asked. Nathan looked back out at the stars. "After, I will move on to the next mission. There is always another threat, another danger, another flock that needs protecting. That is the life of a shepherd. He sounded tired, Valara realized. Not physically tired, but weary in a deeper way. The kind of weariness that came from carrying a weight that never got lighter. It sounds lonely, she said softly. Nathan did not reply. But in the silence, she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked very much like pain. The days that followed were different. Princess Valara found herself seeking out Nathan's company in a way she had never expected. They walked the corridors together, discussing everything from politics to philosophy to the strange customs of their respective worlds. Nathan was a good teacher. He explained human history without arrogance, acknowledging both the triumphs and the failures of his species. He spoke of wars and plagues, of cruelty and kindness, of the long struggle to build something better from the ashes of destruction. We almost destroyed ourselves many times, he admitted one evening as they sat in the observation lounge. Nuclear weapons, climate disasters, pandemics, every generation faced some new threat that could have ended everything. Valara looked at him curiously. How did you survive? We adapted. We learned. And most importantly, we refused to give up. There is something in the human spirit that simply will not accept defeat. Even when everything seems hopeless, there is always someone who keeps fighting. He smiled. My grandmother used to say that humans are too stubborn to die properly. She was probably right. The princess laughed, surprising herself. She had not laughed genuinely in a long time. As they talked, Valara began to understand why Nathan had been sent. It was not just about protection. It was about building trust between their peoples, showing that humans could be friends as well as allies. But she also noticed the shadows that crossed his face when he thought she was not watching. The wariness in his eyes when he spoke of his missions. The way he flinched, just slightly, at sudden noises. One night, she found him in the engine room at 3 a.m. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, staring at nothing. Nathan? He looked up, and for a moment his eyes were empty. Then, recognition returned, and he forced a smile. Your Highness? Trouble sleeping? I could ask you the same thing. She sat down beside him, ignoring the grease and dirt on the floor. The engine hummed around him, a steady heartbeat in the darkness. Tell me about them, she said softly. The people you could not save. Nathan was quiet for so long that she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. There was a girl on Haven's Rest. Her name was Lucy. She was 7 years old. She used to come to my shop every day after school and watch me work. She wanted to be an engineer when she grew up. He closed his eyes. The Dracor landed their troops on the first day. I told the colonists to hide, to stay quiet, to wait for me to deal with the hunters. Most of them listened. But Lucy, she was scared. She ran. Valara felt her heart tighten. By the time I found her, it was too late. She was the first person I lost that day. She was not the last. Nathan, I killed every Dracor on that planet. Every single one. I hunted them through the forests and the mountains and the valleys. I did not sleep for 3 days. When it was over, I stood in the ashes of their ships and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, no peace. Just emptiness. He opened his eyes and looked at her. That is what they do not tell you about being a shepherd. We save lives, yes, but we also lose them, and every loss stays with us forever. Valara did not know what to say. She had been raised in a palace, surrounded by luxury and safety. She had never lost anyone to violence, never faced the kind of choices Nathan faced every day. How do you keep going? She asked finally. Nathan thought about it. Because someone has to. Because if I stop, more people will die. And because I made a promise a long time ago. I promised that I would protect the innocent, no matter the cost. I cannot break that promise, not even when it hurts. He stood and offered her his hand. She took it and let him help her to her feet. You should get some sleep, Your Highness. We reach the summit in 2 days, and you will need your strength. Velara nodded, but she did not leave immediately. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand on his arm. Thank you, she said, for telling me, for trusting me. Nathan looked at her hand, then at her face. Something shifted in his expression, a softening that she had not seen before. You are welcome, Your Highness. The next day brought news that changed everything. Lord Murkhan requested an urgent meeting with the princess. He had been investigating the source of the attacks, following the trail of money and communications that Nathan had uncovered. We have identified the enemy, he announced. 3 factions within the compact have been working together to undermine the Kethari. They fear our alliance with humanity. They believe it will upset the balance of power. He activated a holographic display showing the logos of 3 species: the Vorlon Consortium, the Tethri Collective, and the Malon Republic. Together they control nearly 1/3 of the Compact Council. They hired the assassins and paid the Drakor to intercept us. Velara felt anger rising in her chest. They would start a war just to keep us weak? They believe they can eliminate you before the summit and blame it on pirates or raiders. Without you, the Kethari alliance with humanity would collapse. Your father would be too grief-stricken to negotiate effectively, and the council would pressure him to accept unfavorable terms. Nathan stepped forward. He had been listening silently from the corner of the room. They made a mistake, he said quietly. They thought they could kill a princess. They did not realize they were threatening an ally of humanity. Murkhan looked at him with new respect. Word of the Drakor encounter had spread through the ship, and everyone now knew that the humble apprentice was something far more dangerous. What do you propose? The intelligence officer asked. Nathan smiled, and this time there was an edge to it. I propose we let them think they have won. We continue to the summit as planned. We give them no indication that we know who they are. And when they make their move, we will be ready. Velara studied him. You have a plan? But, for this to work, I need you to trust me completely. There will be moments when things look bad, when it seems like we are losing. You must not panic. You must follow my lead. The princess considered this. A week ago, she would have rejected such a proposal without hesitation. She was royalty. She did not follow the lead of anyone, let alone a human mechanic. But she was not the same person she had been a week ago. She had seen what Nathan could do. More importantly, she had seen who he was underneath the disguise. I trust you, she said. Nathan nodded. Then let us prepare. The summit will be a battlefield, and we need to win. The following days were spent in intense preparation. Nathan worked with Lord Murkhan to identify every possible threat, every potential ally, every weakness in their enemy's plans. He trained the guards in new techniques, taught them to think like humans, to expect the unexpected. He also spent time with Velara, coaching her on what to say and how to act. She needed to appear confident, but not aggressive, strong, but not threatening. She needed to make the other delegates believe she was unaware of the conspiracy, while simultaneously positioning herself to counter it. Politics is like combat, Nathan explained. The winner is usually the one who understands the battlefield better than their opponent. Right now, our enemies think they know everything. They believe they are in control. We are going to prove them wrong. Velara worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. She memorized names and faces, studied alliances and rivalries, practiced her speeches until she could deliver them in her sleep. Through it all, Nathan was there, patient, supportive, never criticizing, always encouraging. He treated her as an equal, a partner, not a princess to be protected or a student to be taught. On the night before they reached the summit, Velara found him on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Nathan shook his head. "Nervous is for people who are not prepared. We are prepared." "And if something goes wrong?" she asked. He turned to face her. In the starlight, his eyes looked almost silver. "Then I will do what I always do. I will protect you no matter what it takes. That is my mission. That is my purpose." Velara felt something stir in her heart. She had known this man for less than 2 weeks, but in that time, he had changed everything. He had showed her a different way to see the universe, a different way to understand power. "Nathan," she said softly, "when this is over, what will you do?" He looked back at the stars. "I will move on. There are always more threats, more missions. The shepherds never rest." "It sounds exhausting." "It is." He smiled slightly. "But it is also meaningful. Every life I save, every disaster I prevent, makes the loneliness worthwhile. That is what I tell myself anyway." Velara reached out and took his hand. He tensed for a moment, then relaxed. "You do not have to be alone," she said. "Not always." Nathan looked at their joined hands, then at her face. For once, she could not read his expression. "That is a kind thing to say, Your Highness." "I mean it." He squeezed her hand gently, then let go. "We should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." He walked away, leaving her alone with the stars, but as she watched him go, Velara made a silent promise. When this was over, she would find a way to help him, to give him something other than missions and loneliness, to show him that even shepherds deserve to be cared for. But she would find a way. She always did. The Compact Summit was held on a massive space station called Unity, a neutral ground where all species could meet without fear of attack. It was the largest gathering of alien civilizations in the known galaxy, with representatives from over 200 worlds. Princess Velara stood at the entrance to the grand chamber, her silver skin gleaming under the artificial lights. She wore the ceremonial robes of Cathari royalty, deep purple with threads of gold woven through the fabric. Behind her stood her guards, her advisors, and Nathan. He was no longer dressed as an apprentice. He wore a simple black uniform, with no rank insignia, no medals, no decorations. The only mark on it was a small symbol over his heart, a shepherd's crook, crossed with a sword. Word of the Dracor retreat had spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Delegates whispered as Velara walked past, pointing at the human who had turned back the most feared hunters in existence with a single sentence. Guards from a dozen different species watched Nathan with a mixture of fear and respect. The grand chamber was circular, with seats arranged in ascending tiers around a central speaking platform. The 3 hostile factions sat together on one side: the Vorlon, tall and thin with pale blue skin; the Tethri, small and numerous with clicking mandibles; and the Malon, heavy-set creatures with 4 arms and no visible eyes. Their representatives watched Velara with barely concealed hostility. They had expected her to die before reaching the summit. They had paid a fortune to make it happen, and now she stood before them, alive and confident, with a shepherd at her side. The session began with formal greetings and procedural matters. Velara sat patiently, waiting for her turn to speak. Nathan stood behind her chair, silent and still, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. When her time came, the princess rose and walked to the central platform. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now that it was here, she felt strangely calm. "Honored delegates," she began, "I come before you as a representative of the Cathari Empire, seeking to strengthen our bonds with the Galactic Compact. My people have much to offer: advanced technology, rich resources, and a desire for peaceful cooperation." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I also come with a warning. There are those in this chamber who do not want peace. There are those who would rather see the Cathari destroyed than accept us as equals. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Vorlon ambassador shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Velara continued, her voice steady and strong. In the past 2 weeks, my ship has been attacked twice. First, by Vethkai assassins. Then, by a Drakor hunting pack. Both attacks were funded by members of this council. The murmur became a roar. Delegates shouted questions, demanded explanations, accused each other of treachery. The Vorlon ambassador rose to his feet, his pale face twisted with anger. This is outrageous. These are baseless accusations. Velara raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. I have proof. Financial records, communication logs, testimony from captured assassins. The evidence is clear and undeniable. She looked directly at the 3 conspirators. The Vorlon Consortium, the Tethri Collective, and the Malon Republic worked together to kill me and sabotage my people's alliance with humanity. They feared that our partnership would upset their control of the council. The chamber erupted again. Security officers moved toward the 3 factions, hands on their weapons. It was chaos, exactly as Nathan had predicted. But then something unexpected happened. The Malon delegate stood and bellowed a command in his guttural language. A dozen hidden operatives emerged from the crowd, weapons drawn, forming a protective circle around the 3 conspirators. You think we did not prepare for this? The Malon snarled. You think we would let a Kethari princess destroy us with accusations? More operatives appeared, taking positions around the chamber. They had smuggled weapons past security, planted agents throughout the station. This was their backup plan, the contingency for if everything else failed. Here is what will happen, the Malon continued. The princess will withdraw her accusations, the evidence will be destroyed, and the Kethari will accept whatever terms we offer. Otherwise, he gestured at the armed operatives. Otherwise, this chamber becomes a tomb. Panic spread through the delegates. Some tried to run, only to be stopped by armed guards. Others huddled in their seats, too frightened to move. The Vorlon and Tethri representatives smiled, confident that their plan had worked. Then, Nathan stepped forward. He walked slowly down the steps from the Kethari section, making no effort to hide his approach. The operatives turned their weapons toward him, but he did not slow down. Stop right there, human, the Malon growled. One more step and we open fire. Nathan stopped in the center of the chamber, surrounded by enemies. He looked around at the armed operatives, counting them silently. 47, he said calmly. That is how many of you there are. 47 operatives, armed with standard energy weapons, positioned to cover all exits. He smiled. It is not enough. The Malon laughed, a harsh sound like grinding stone. Even a shepherd cannot defeat 47 armed soldiers. Nathan tilted his head slightly. Who said I was alone? At that moment, the lights in the chamber flickered. A deep hum resonated through the walls, and every operative's weapon went dead simultaneously. Their power cells had been remotely drained. Before anyone could react, figures dropped from the ceiling. They moved with impossible speed, striking with precision and efficiency. In less than 30 seconds, every operative was on the ground, unconscious or restrained. When it was over, 12 humans stood in the chamber, each wearing the same black uniform as Nathan, each bearing the same symbol over their heart. The shepherds had arrived. Nathan turned to face the 3 conspirators. They were pale with terror, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. You thought you could threaten an ally of humanity, Nathan said quietly. You thought you could kill a princess and suffer no consequences. You were wrong. He stepped closer, and even the massive Malon flinched back. The Kethari are under our protection now. If any harm comes to them, If any of you even think about betraying them again, we will know, and we will come for you." His eyes swept across the 3 delegates. "This is your only warning. There will not be a second one." The chamber was absolutely silent. Every delegate, every guard, every observer watched the 12 humans with a mixture of awe and fear. Then Velara spoke, her voice ringing out across the chamber. "I call for an immediate vote. The Vorlon Consortium, the Tethri Collective, and the Malon Republic are to be censured for their actions. Their council seats are to be suspended, pending a full investigation. And the Kethari alliance with humanity is to be formally recognized and ratified. No one dared oppose it." The summit concluded 3 days later. Princess Velara had achieved everything she had hoped for, and more. Her people's rights were secured, their alliance with humanity was official, and their enemies had been exposed and neutralized. On the morning of her departure, she found Nathan in the hangar bay. He was checking his shuttle, preparing to leave for his next mission. "You are not coming back to Kethari Prime with us?" she asked. He shook his head. "I am needed elsewhere. There is always another threat." Velara felt a pang of sadness. She had grown accustomed to his presence, his quiet strength, his unexpected kindness. "Will I ever see you again?" Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a personal communicator, simple in appearance, but humming with advanced technology. "This has a single frequency," he said. "If you or your people ever need help, use it. A shepherd will come." Velara took the device carefully, feeling its weight in her hand. "And what if I just want to talk to Nathan Cole?" she asked softly. "The apprentice who fixed my ship and told bad jokes and taught my crew to play chess?" Nathan smiled, and for once it reached his eyes. "Then I suppose you could use it for that too." He started to turn away, then stopped. "Your Highness, Velara, thank you." She blinked in surprise. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not the shepherd, not the weapon. Me." He paused. "It has been a long time since anyone did that." Velara stepped forward and embraced him. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, letting himself accept the comfort. "Take care of yourself, Nathan Cole," she whispered, "and remember, you do not have to carry everything alone." They separated, and Nathan nodded once. Then he turned and walked onto his shuttle without looking back. Velara watched the small vessel lift off and disappear into the stars. Somewhere out there, he would continue his endless mission, protecting the innocent, fighting the darkness. But she held his communicator tight in her hand, a promise of future connection. And she knew that whenever she needed him, he would come. The Starlight Throne began its journey home. Behind them, the summit station grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another point of light in the vastness of space. Princess Velara stood at the observation window, looking out at the galaxy she had once thought she understood. Everything was different now. She had seen the darkness that lurked between the stars, but she had also seen the light that humanity carried within them. They were strange creatures, these humans, soft and fragile on the outside, but inside them burned something that even the greatest predators feared. They called themselves shepherds, but Velara thought a different name might be more fitting. They were guardians, protectors, lights in the darkness, and as long as they watched over the galaxy, there was hope. She pressed the communicator against her heart and smiled. Somewhere far away, Nathan Cole was already planning his next mission. But perhaps, someday, he would come back. The diplomatic shuttle was nothing special. It was a small vessel, gray and plain, the kind of ship that carried supplies and low-ranking officers between stations. Princess Velara of the Kethari Empire watched it land through the tall windows of the docking bay, and she felt her irritation grow with every passing second. Her people had joined the Galactic Compact 6 months ago. It was a historic moment for the Kethari. a proud species with silver skin and eyes like cut diamonds. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 3,000 years, and now they were reaching out to form alliances with other civilizations. The humans were new to the galactic stage, but they were expanding fast, and the Cathari Council had decided that a cultural exchange would strengthen ties between the two species. Velara had expected someone important, an ambassador perhaps, or a senior military officer, someone who matched her own status as the eldest daughter of the Emperor himself. The shuttle door opened and a young man stepped out. He was average height, with brown hair that needed a cut, and a face that would not stand out in any crowd. He wore simple brown clothes, the kind worn by mechanics and laborers, and there was a tool belt around his waist. A smudge of grease marked his left cheek, and he carried a worn bag over one shoulder. He looked around the docking bay with curious eyes, then spotted the princess and her entourage. He walked toward them with an easy stride, not rushed, not nervous. When he reached the group, he offered a small bow. "Your Highness," he said, "I am Nathan Cole. I have been assigned as your cultural liaison for the journey to the Compact Summit." Velara stared at him. Her chief advisor, Lord Murkan, leaned close to her ear. "They send an apprentice to advise royalty." The princess agreed, but she kept her face calm. She had been trained since childhood to hide her emotions. She gave Nathan a small nod. "Welcome aboard the Starlight Throne," she said. "I trust your journey was comfortable." Nathan smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind that made his whole face light up. "It was fine, thank you, although I noticed an unusual vibration during approach. Felt like a harmonic imbalance in your port stabilizers. Probably nothing serious, but I could take a look if you want." Lord Murkan's face turned purple with outrage. "You dare suggest that our vessel has mechanical problems? Our engineers are the finest in the Empire." Nathan held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "No offense meant. I am sure they are. It is just a habit of mine. I notice things." Velara studied him for a moment. There was something in his eyes, something she could not quite identify. It was gone in an instant, replaced by that friendly smile. "Show him to his quarters," she told one of the servants. "The lower deck will be sufficient." If Nathan was bothered by being housed with the servants, he did not show it. He simply nodded, thanked her for the hospitality, and followed the servant away. Lord Murkan watched him go with narrowed eyes. "I do not trust him. There is something wrong about that one." Velara shook her head. "He is nobody, a mechanic playing at diplomacy. The humans clearly do not take us seriously." She turned and walked back toward her chambers, already composing the formal complaint she would send to Earth's government. She did not see Nathan glance back over his shoulder, his eyes scanning every guard position, every camera, every potential entry point. She did not see the way his smile faded when no one was watching. The Starlight Throne was a magnificent vessel, built to showcase Cathari engineering and wealth. Its corridors were lined with crystal panels that glowed with soft light, its floors polished stone from the sacred mountains of the homeworld. Every room was designed to impress and intimidate visitors. Nathan spent his first evening exploring. He asked permission from no one, simply wandered through the ship with his tool bag, stopping occasionally to examine a console or peer into a maintenance shaft. The crew did not know what to make of him. He was too low-ranking to question, but too foreign to ignore. He ended up in the engine room around midnight. The night shift engineers were surprised to see him, but Nathan introduced himself politely and asked if he could observe. The chief engineer, a gruff old Cathari named Vortek, shrugged and told him to stay out of the way. Nathan stayed for 3 hours. He asked questions about the power systems, the shield generators, the life support. His questions were simple at first, the kind any curious visitor might ask. But they grew more technical as the night went on, and Vortek found himself explaining things he had never discussed with anyone outside his team. When Nathan finally left, Vortek realized he had learned more about human engineering than he had taught about Cathari systems. He was not sure how that had happened. In her chambers, Princess Velara slept fitfully. She dreamed of shadows moving through corridors, of dangers she could not name. She woke to alarms. 3 intruders had been detected in the royal wing. The guards scrambled to respond, weapons drawn, but by the time they reached the scene, it was over. 3 Vethkai assassins lay bound and unconscious outside the security office. They were professionals, members of a notorious guild that had never failed a contract. Their weapons had been taken, their poisons confiscated, their communication devices disabled. A note was pinned to the leader's chest. It was written in neat handwriting on a scrap of paper. "You might want better locks, NC." The head of security reviewed every recording from that night. He checked every sensor log, every motion detector, every heat signature. According to every system on the ship, Nathan Cole had been in his quarters the entire time, sleeping peacefully. The princess demanded answers. How had the assassins gotten aboard? Who had hired them? And most importantly, who had stopped them? No one could tell her. Nathan appeared at breakfast the next morning, cheerful as ever. He had fixed the food synthesizer on the lower deck, he announced. It had been producing meals with too much salt. The servants thanked him warmly. Velara watched him from across the dining hall. He was joking with a young crew member, teaching her some kind of human game involving cards. He laughed easily, moved casually, showed no sign of anything unusual. But when he caught her looking, his eyes met hers for just a moment. And in that moment, she saw something ancient and cold looking back at her. Something that made her feel like prey. Then it was gone, and he was just Nathan again, the clumsy apprentice with grease on his cheek. Lord Merkan approached her table. "I have identified the assassins. They are Vethkai, hired by unknown parties. They were supposed to kill you before we reached the summit." "And the human?" Velara asked quietly. "What do we know about him?" "Nothing," Merkan admitted. "His records show he is exactly what he claims to be. An apprentice engineer from a colony world called New Montana. No military service, no special training, no connections to anyone important." Velara looked back at Nathan. He was making a card disappear for the young crew member, who clapped with delight. "Find out more," she said. "There is something he is not telling us." But deep in her heart, she was not sure she wanted to know the truth.